Art Basel is one of the most prestigious contemporary and modern art fairs in the world. This year, several thousand artists will be represented here in the city of Basel by hundreds of established and emerging galleries from around the globe. Leading the organization is our newsmaker today. He is Art Basel Global Director, Marc Spiegler. Well, Marc, thank you so much for joining us on the Newsmaker today. It's such a pleasure.
Thank you very much. Thank you for taking the time to come to Basel. We're in the full setup phases now.
I can hear,
a few days
I can
before
see.
the show, yes.
Yeah, so the nerves, the excitement is mounting. What are you especially excited about Art Basel 2019?
The interesting thing about being an art fair director is that a lot of what's most exciting to you by the end of the week, you don't even know is coming. You know, we're in the stage literally where crates are being opened in these halls and artworks are coming out. And many of those we know about ahead of time because of the nature in which those projects are selected. But more than 200 galleries are chosen just on the basis of their program. And so they can bring whatever they want. And what they choose to bring often is unknown to us. And they like to keep it a secret or a surprise. So it's a little bit like Christmas for us, in the sense that packages are opening. There's packaging all over the place, and crates are opening, and then there's amazing artworks coming out.
You're going to have about 290 exhibitors, as I understand it, several thousand artists, and you'll expect anywhere up to 100,000 people coming through these doors.
Yes.
It's massive.
It is massive, Thank God it's a week long, so we have time for everybody to
Over
see
6
all
days,
the artworks.
this is important, yeah.
But I think it's also something that people gear up for all year long, and people are coming in from all over the world. Artists, artworkers are coming in from all over the world. Gallerists are coming in from all over the world. Collectors are coming in from all over the world. This is a show which has a real history. It's one of the oldest art fairs in the world, and it's in a city which is arguably one of the greatest and longest cultural capitals of Europe. We have the oldest art museum in the world here, the Kunstmuseum Basel, for example. And I think the strength of Art Basel plays very much from that history, that this was a cultural capital long before Art Basel existed, and then we built on that.
So not only art in what we can imagine, paintings and sculptures, you also have some kind of, I don't know, shall we call it performance art? I'm not sure. Alexandra Perici?
I think the best way to describe Alexandra Perici's piece is just to go into the details. In her piece, you have 60 dancers who have been instructed in a vocabulary of gestures and motions and song by her. And every time the piece takes place, it's different. And it's 4 hours long, but it's not choreographed. And so in that sense, you can drop into it at any point, and you could watch it for 4 hours, you could watch it for 15 minutes. I saw an earlier version of it in Buenos Aires last year, and I have to say it was one of the most amazing pieces that I saw that entire year.
Wow.
So I would strongly encourage anyone who's coming to Basel to make time to see that piece on Messeplatz.
Okay, great. You've also got some film and pop-ups even.
Yeah, we have the film sectors and parkour are sectors that have been part of the fair for a long time. In both cases, I think they represent a type of artwork which is important, but which doesn't really fit so well in the context of an art fair hall. With film, we have a series of programs curated by Max Soller and Marion Missone, and they are works that are by and about artists, or films that are by and about artists. Parkour represents the desire of artists not just to show in museums and in fair halls and in classical settings, but also to show in historical settings or in industrial settings. These are works that are in situ. They're made for the venue, or they're chosen for a particular venue, and they're works which are accessible to the public. The idea that next week you might see a work not only by coming to the show, but also just by stumbling upon it as you go to work or as you go to school is really important to us. And I think there are many, many artists for whom the idea that their work is not just for the art world, but for anybody and can be seen by anybody is really important.
So talk to me about, now we're going to switch gears.
Sure.
Talk to me about what's been called this radical move on your part with the introduction of a new pricing system at the fair. How does it work, and
Sure. It's
why
complex.
is it radical?
It's complex, but I'll try to make it simple. And maybe I'll start at the beginning.
Okay.
Within the art world, there's been a lot of concern, and fully justified concern, about the difficulties for smaller and mid-level galleries in terms of their financial stability. And one of the major costs for these galleries is art fair booths. Historically, we and everybody else had done art fair booths based on square meters. In other words, you paid X amount per square meter.
Sure.
And we started to question this as we thought about the dynamics of a fair in which people were paying the same price per square meter, regardless of whether they had 25,000 francs worth of work to sell, or 25 million worth of francs worth to sell, or even 100 million worth of francs worth of art to sell. So what we devised is a system which is a little bit like progressive taxation in the sense that the larger your booth is, the larger you pay per square meter. It's not that radical in the sense that the smaller booths might pay $770 per square meter, and the larger ones might pay still a little bit less than $1,000 per square meter. So it's not so huge. And this was the thing that we discussed with the galleries who were affected, the ones who are at the top end of the scale. And what was great about it was that people really saw the need. People saw the value in supporting their colleagues who were not as successful, who were not as established, who were not as financially secure. And I'm not sure that that's the case in every industry. I don't see Uber embracing measures to support Lyft, for example. And I think it's representative of the way in which the art ecosystem works. I think the more established galleries are very conscious of the fact that these younger galleries, these mid-level galleries, often are the ones who are promoting artists, discovering artists, pushing them along, or keeping artists' legacy alive, keeping their work going during difficult periods where the attention isn't necessarily upon them. And so the artists that these bigger, most established galleries work with have to get to a certain level, have to be at a certain level. And in order for that to be achieved, you need these galleries, the younger ones, the mid-level galleries, to be secure as well. And so in essence, it's a system which we established. We announced it last year. It will go into effect for this fair here in Basel next June, or this June, next week. But it's also interesting because other fairs, when we announced this, it turned out either had been considering similar systems or put similar systems in place. And so while this move for one, will not for one fair change the financial prospects of a gallery, when other fairs put this into effect, it actually has a real impact.
Has a good domino effect, hopefully.
Yes,
right.
Exactly.
And did something happen that brought this on? Because you said you'd been thinking about it. Was there like a needle that broke the camel's back, for example?
No, it's just, we have a very open and direct dialogue with our gallerists, both with our committee members, with whom we work very closely for the selection of the shows, but also with other gallerists. One of the things that I do and that Noah Horowitz, who's our Director Americas, and that Adeline Oye, who's our Director Asia, do a lot, is go and visit galleries in their galleries and talk to them about their business, or have dinner with them, or have lunch with them. And I think we try to keep our finger on the pulse. And we saw this more and more. It took us a long time, longer than we would have liked, let's say, to find the exact system. It's a pretty specific algorithm that is, on the one hand, supportive of the younger galleries, on the other hand, not so radical that it causes an undue burden for the established galleries. Because even they are in tough financial competition with each other and with the auction houses.
I want to talk more about this, about the situation of the art galleries in just a moment, but to just finish up with the business model. So besides renting the physical space and this new price model, as I understand it, your other sources of income are ticketing and sponsorship. How else could you grow the revenue? What other kind of diversification?
We're always looking at new possibilities, but the core of the show business is going to be, has been from the beginning, ticket sales and services and square meters that we sell or rent to the exhibitors. About 25 years ago, we started working with partners. Our first one was the bank, which is now UBS, and with whom we continue to work very closely. This is an important part of our business, working with our corporate partners, because it allows us to do things at the shows which we wouldn't be able to do otherwise, which are very important to the shows.
Like?
Things like Unlimited, for example, which was also supported by UBS. We could, if we sold the square meters in the Unlimited sector, where we have 75 large-scale artworks at a level that no other fair has, if we sold those as square meters, we would make a lot more money, but we also wouldn't have something which is so unique within the art world. And so the fact that UBS embraced that from the beginning allowed us, at the moment, until it started to really pay for itself, to launch it.
How much money do you need to make it happen?
How much money do you need to make it? There's never too much money to make it happen. No, there's always more you can invest in. There's always more you can invest in to promote your galleries. There's always more you can invest. One of the things that we've done in recent times, for example, is to do online videos about our gallerists, about collectors, about institutions, about artists.
Conversations or
no, there's conversations, Conversations is the recording and retransmission of the conversations that happen at the fair. But these are the series that are played across our website and across our social media, like Meet the Gallerist, Meet the Artist, Meet the Collector.
Okay, all right. So this is another way that you
Yeah, this is another way that we work for our shows.
And you diversify.
And you know, one example of another possibility for us is the Art Basel Cities program, which we launched in Buenos Aires a few years ago, and I think reached its high point last year when Cecilia Alemani, who's one of the great curators of her generation, best known perhaps for doing the Highline project in New York since its inception, worked in the context of several very different neighborhoods in Buenos Aires to bring international Argentine and Latin American artists to bring together something which resembled a mini sort of biennial, but was in any case an urban exhibition which included performances, artworks, installations, you know, and I think that's a really fantastic way that we can leverage our network and our knowledge on behalf of a city.
Right.
It is a business. It's a new kind of business for us. You know, it's a fourth kind of client after the ticket buying public, the galleries, and the corporate partners. Now we can work with governments as well.
Cities directly. As I understand it, it was a little over $2 million that the city of Buenos Aires
we never discuss these kinds of figures.
Okay. All right, but the reviews, were they mixed?
The reviews were positive, very positive.
Okay.
I mean, I think this was...
I guess I came across the one not positive.
Well, I mean, there are always people who, there's always a voice of dissent somewhere. But the point is, you know, I think if you talk to people in Buenos Aires from the cultural scene, they will support the notion that this is something which has really put a nation which was long at the edge of the world, you know, because of the political issues they were facing, because of the economic issues they were facing, and really put their cultural scene on the map. And a lot of artists, you know, that were present there are present here, are present in Venice. And, you know, I think if you were to talk to the people who are in the cultural scene, both privately and publicly there, you would find a pretty uniform opinion that this was a very positive thing for the city.
And it doesn't take away from the artists coming to the bigger fairs. I mean,
No,
if they've
not
got a
at all.
regional kind of situation, then would they still come to Basel, Hong Kong, or Miami, or?
I mean, the art world travels, you know, and I think the notion that people might come to 4 Art Basel events when they're going to 20 events per year is completely acceptable.
Okay. Okay. All right.
You know? And also, I mean, I think what's really important is this was a project that gave us a kind of insight and a network in a whole in a continent with whom we had a connection because of Art Basel Miami Beach, of course, because of the special place that the Miami area sits in within the geopolitics and the socioeconomics of Latin America and North America. But, you know, this gave us a much deeper connection to that continent.
And what, so Buenos Aires, and then who's the next city?
We never talk about things until we do them.
There are a lot of things you don't talk about now.
Well, you know, we're Swiss. We're Swiss in that sense, you know.
But you don't know who the next city would be, or any,
we're not,
you can't give me any hints.
We never discuss things before
When?
we do.
When would it happen?
We never discuss things before we do.
All right.
These are complex projects. You know, they require cities to make a very large investment over a large period of time. And so, in essence, you know, I think when you're asking people to go this deep for this long, we were lucky with Buenos Aires because they were you know, they're risk takers. You know, and I think you know, for other projects, this is something that we're in a lot of discussions at any given point. And when one of them comes to fruition, or when several of them come to fruition, we will be happy to announce it.
All right. Well, then I'll be waiting. I'll be waiting for that. I want to talk quickly about the MCH Group, Art Basel's parent company. So, still struggling. Share price is still under 20 francs. When I spoke to the interim CEO, which we talked about, he did emphasize how Art Basel really works. So, no pressure on you. But, you know, even so, consolidation is happening. They're divesting themselves, have divested themselves already of some regional art fairs, India Art. Dusseldorf just closed that deal. Now it belongs to a couple of collectors, I believe. And anyway, they sold their stake. In your opinion, I mean, how does this translate to you at Art Basel?
I mean, we've always been very careful about how we spend our money. You know, in the sense, I think we regularly evaluate the way in which we work for our galleries and where we invest our time and our money and our energies. And I think obviously in this kind of situation, you do another loop through. But I have to say that, you know, we've never been asked to do something that would be against the interests of our clients, against the interests of you know, of Art Basel. You know, we have the good fortune, even in these difficult times for the parent company, to have a leadership which is conscious of how Art Basel has been built, the fact that our gallerists can't be pushed that much, for example, the fact that our corporate partners are already working with us as energetically as they can. You know, and I think you know, we're also working closely with people within the rest of the group to try to help them through their, you know, through their challenges.
Oh, yeah?
You know, yeah, of
How
course.
so?
Well, I mean, I think it's, we have a kind of knowledge and a kind of expertise in areas that the group has looked to explore, things like doing more work internationally, more work digitally, et cetera.
So possibly things like Basel World Hong Kong. Are you giving
again, I'm going to come back. Come
on, Marc.
It's not my place to speak for MCH,
right.
First of all.
Right.
And secondly,
but you have Art Basel Hong Kong, so if they're doing a Basel World Hong Kong, then they could turn to you for some advice.
Every industry is different, and anyone in the company who wants our advice is welcome to have it. But it's also, you can't copy paste what Art Basel has done into other industries. The art world, especially of all industries, is a very specific kind of thing. And so the things that don't work within our industry might be fantastic ideas for other industries.
Right.
And the things that do work within our industries might be catastrophically bad ideas for other industries. So I think, we're always in open dialogue with anybody. But mostly what we've focused on in the last 2 years is to do what we do as well as we can for our company, for Art Basel, for our galleries.
And do you think just that divesting the regional fairs, do you think that was a good move?
I think it made sense within the strategic context of the company. I think it was, I supported the idea of doing the regional fairs, but I also felt like, given where the company was, the idea to really focus on the things that are working now, the things that we know how to make work, and considering other future possibilities that are really scalable made a lot of sense.
Earlier you mentioned challenges that are facing small and medium-sized galleries.
Sure.
What is your assessment of what's going on? How bad is it?
We're in a moment of paradigm shift. I think, the ways in which people buy art is shifting. The ways in which people come into the market is shifting. I think the type of art that people are buying is shifting. I think there's a lot of things are shifting, and I think what's clear is that the old model of finding some artists, having the work delivered to the gallery, selling it,
right,
taking 50%, sitting in the gallery, having an opening, waiting for people to come, doesn't work. But a lot of new models are being explored. I think some people are doing pop-ups with other galleries.
Okay.
Some people are working heavily within social media as a promotional tool. Some people are really focused on perhaps working with a different type of artist or a different type of collector. So I think in that sense, it's really, it's a moment of redefinition for a lot of galleries and reconsideration, and we're supporting that.
What is the role of art fairs and Art Basel?
I think the role of art fairs is to think about things, to think about how the situation is shifting. One of the things we did, it's a minor step, for example, but this year we said, the feature booths, which traditionally had been limited to only one gallery, now two artists could work together, or two galleries could work together to show one artist, for example, if they both represented the artist. In other words, it reduces the financial risk, and it also allows two galleries who've been equally supportive of an artist historically to show that artist together. All right.
So this idea that art galleries are pushing out, and that art fairs are kind of pushing out galleries and becoming like the go-to place rather than people going to smaller galleries. They just say, well, I'm just going to consolidate my efforts and my cost. I'm going to go to Art Basel.
Okay, first of all, you have to have a gallery in order to be part of the fair. You have to have a regular program in order to be part of the fair. There's this kind of, false equivalence that's made where people say, because there's more, that fairs are somehow hurting galleries. The reality is, the reason why people don't go to galleries so much anymore is because they have less time. We're all conscious of this. Everybody watching this program, I'm sure, feels more pressured for time than they did 10 years ago.
Absolutely.
And so in our mind, what a fair allows a gallery to do is to connect with new collectors, who we then hope, and we're doing a lot to push that, and I'll get to that in one moment, but who we then hope will be excited enough about the gallery and its artists to go to the galleries in their own cities, when they travel, when they go to Los Angeles, to go see the gallery in its own space, rather than just in the fair booth. And one of the things that we've done, announced in the last few days, is to announce a new section within our app, which is called the Global Guide. And the Global Guide is launching, and we're going to fill it with features. What it is basically is a location-based service through which, when you are in a city, you will be fed information about what's happening at the Art Basel galleries within that city. And eventually galleries will be able to upload events happening involving their artists at their galleries and so on and so forth. Okay. But the basic notion is to extend what we've always believed, which is that we work for our galleries not just 1, 2, or 3 weeks a year, depending on how many of our fairs they do, but all of the year.
Right.
That if we want to be strong as a fair, then the galleries that we work with have to be strong. And it's not enough to deliver a great show 3 times a year. We also have to try to help them every day of every week, of every month, of every year.
I want to touch quickly on the latest UBS Art Basel Art Market Report, which you guys, as you said, put together with one of your sponsors,
exactly,
UBS.
Yeah.
So in 2000 there were, in 2000 there were fewer than 60 art fairs. Now there's more than 300. Is there just too many art fairs?
We only do 3. We only added 1 fair in that, or 2 fairs in that period. You know.
I mean, are we at a saturation point?
I mean, I think the market will tell us if we're at a saturation point. You know, I mean, the reality is, as long as there are galleries,
collectors are saying it. That's
as long as there are galleries enough to fill those fairs, I guess we're not at a saturation point. But certainly, I think people talk a lot about fatigue. You know, which is it's a nice word, but I see it in maybe in a more subtle way because of the nature of what I do. But I mean, for me, there are definitely collectors who feel like they need to go to fewer fairs than they used to. And part of that is because their collection is mostly built, and part of that is because they feel like they've been to enough fairs, or part of that is they feel like they've been to a particular fair often enough, but now they want to go to another fair. But I mean, for instance, when I look at what's happened in Hong Kong, Art Basel Hong Kong, you know, since 2013, when we put our name on it, has only risen in terms of the quality of galleries who want to come, and also the collectors who are coming. You know, this is a fair where great young and established collectors from all over the world are coming for the first time, where great young and established galleries are coming for the first time. So if there's fatigue, it certainly is not visible in Art Basel Hong Kong. You know, what is true, and what we saw in the report, for example, is that galleries are doing more business at fairs, but they're doing it at fewer fairs. And it's definitely the case that galleries are looking more closely, or analyzing more closely their fair business. You know, in the last 2 years, I've had more discussions than my first 10 years at Art Basel with galleries saying, hey, we started to run the numbers on this fair, and we're wondering, you know, and often they're asking about another fair, like, do you think I should do some other fair? And I don't feel like it's my place to tell them which fairs to do. But what's interesting is the degree to which what's traditionally been sort of a very ambiguous business is now being looked at in terms of tough metrics, and people are trying to quantify something which is hard to quantify. Because, for example, obviously if a work is sold here next week, it's an Art Basel sale. But what if a work is sold today because a collector knows it's coming next week and they want to buy it before anybody sees it? Or what if a work is sold that was at the fair, but 3 months from now, to a collector that saw it at the show? Or what about if work which wasn't even at the show is sold to a collector that the gallery met at the show? You know, all of these, I would argue, are sales that are related to Art Basel and to what we've done here.
Right. And the role of digitization as well. I mean, now the galleries have more access to more people via online.
Sure. Right. I mean, we have roughly 250,000 people that come to we have roughly 250,000 people that come to our shows. We have roughly 3 million social media accounts following our various channels. So, you know, and that number has only risen and risen. So in essence, and those, of course, you know, in comparison to the 3 weeks we have the shows, the social media is 24/7, 365. And so, you know, from that perspective, digital is incredibly important. You know, and I think it has 2 real values, or 3 real values. Let's say before the show, it builds a lot of momentum. There are people right now scanning through the thousands of images that are of works that are coming to the show next week, looking for artists they're interested in, looking to see what their favorite galleries are bringing. During the show, of course, people will be getting notifications and following each other's Instagram channels to figure out what they might be looking at. And then after the show, there's this long tail effect. You know, our app has something like 40,000 images in it now of works that were shown at previous Art Basel shows. So if I'm interested to know about an artist and who represented that artist and what works they brought, I can go and look that up years in the future.
Another amazing number is
Yeah.
the way that the art market itself has grown
Right.
around the globe. We're looking 6% up to an estimated 67.4 billion.
Yeah.
Second highest level in 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
So what, are just people just buying more art? Is there more art? Where's this momentum coming from?
I mean, I think the momentum comes from the fact that there is greater wealth at the high end. There are more ultra net worth high individuals than ever before, but also I think contemporary art has become more and more accessible. I think more and more people are interested in it. It's more and more, it's considered a more and more acceptable way to spend your money. I mean, I think the reality is that in many countries, 10 years ago, people who bought contemporary art were considered to be perhaps a little bit freakish. That not everybody did it. And I think there's this point where, if you're not involved in culture in some way, and you have the wealth to be a patron, people look at you funny and say, are you uneducated? Do you not have a soul? Are you not curious? And I think
or at least as an investment.
People are
right?
looking at it, and I think the reality is, if you come to Art Basel next week here, when people say to me, I don't like contemporary art, I challenge them to come through these halls, look at thousands of artists in hundreds of galleries, and find nothing that doesn't speak to them. Right. I think the reality is artists are working in so many different ways, coming from so many different perspectives than before, that contemporary art has thousands, if not tens of thousands, of entry points for people into it. And then once you come into it, there's this kind of spider web effect. One artist connects you to another artist, one work connects you to another work. And so in that sense, I think once you cross that threshold, it's an endless journey.
Obviously, another big talking point across many sectors these days is diversity and inclusion. I actually came across a report from earlier this year where they surveyed 18 museums across the US, and 85% of their work is white male. I mean, is this a challenge that you come across at art fairs and at Art Basel in particular, and how do you handle it?
This is something which is incredibly important to us in terms of how we look at the art world, in terms of how we deal with the art world. We face the challenge, which goes back to the fact that we deal with work that goes back to 1900, and it's impossible for us to counteract completely the institutional sexism that existed in the early half of the 20th century. That being said, I think Art Basel as a platform has been a place where great historical artists who had been overlooked because of their gender, but also because of their race, or because of what country they lived in, or because of their sexual orientation, were overlooked. And they've been brought back here. But just as importantly, and this is more by chance, 15 of the 18 artists in the statement sector, which was for the youngest artists in the fair with the most emerging galleries, are women this year. And we didn't set a quota, but I'm very happy when I saw that number. In fact, I wasn't even conscious of it during the selections process, but it just happened this way. And I think it's because there are great artists working, from all different perspectives, and there are great artists of all gender, of all orientation, from every part of the world working today, and it's wonderful that all of them are going to be here.
Turning 50 next year, what have you got in the pipeline? Can you tell me anything?
Well, we're doing a big project which we have.
Not you, by the way. Art
Yes,
Basel is turning 50.
I turned 50 last year. So we're doing a project with Casper Koenig, who's one of the legendary curators from Europe, working with Hamza Walker, a great African-American curator based in LA, and Christina Lee, a young Hong Kong-based curator. They're going to do a project which stretches across all three shows and beyond. It's still very much in development.
All right.
But, I think it's, in Switzerland, when it's your birthday, you have to bring pastries to the office. And I think in the same way, we feel like, although it's our birthday, rather than waiting for gifts, we should give something to the art world. And what we're giving is this. But obviously, it will also be an occasion to look back a lot at what's happened in these 50 years, both within Art Basel, but also I think the story of Art Basel is also the story of the art market and the story, to some extent, of the art world. And I think there'll be a lot of looking back, but I also think that one of the great qualities of Art Basel is that we've never really rested on our laurels. We don't assume that what we've done before is why we were successful. We don't just continue it. We believe in continuing to make experiments. Some of them will fail. All of them will teach us. And in that sense, I think when we hit 50, it's not just a moment to look backwards, but most importantly, it's a moment to look forwards. It's important not to think, how far did we come in 50 years, but where will the next 50 years bring the art world? Where will it bring Art Basel?
Well, Marc, thank you so much for your time. It was a real pleasure.
Thank you. For me as well. I hope to see you next week.
Yes.